Health state utilities. These are how we weight the times people spend in different health states. And so we need numbers, and these were the numbers that went into the model. At starting state, you've got HCV, but you're non-serotic, 0.77. This is on a scale where 0 is considered the value of dead and 1 value of full health. Compensated cirrhosis, by contrast, has a value of 0.55. Now, the thing to point out here is these numbers, and I'm not even allowed to tell you what these ones are, some sort of commercial and confidence argument, I don't get, but anyway. These numbers have come from lots of different sources. And so you could have a real concern about whether they mean the same thing. And so, for example, a lot of these ones, I think, were a measure called the EQ5D, but this one is the SF6D. It's a different measure. Sometimes it's very small samples, but those were the data available. And that's the characteristic of decision making, where a decision has to be made. You want to look at the evidence, you want the best evidence possible, but the best evidence possible may not be very good. And again, some of it's quite old data. 1996 to 98. Yeah. But we need these numbers to weight the time people spend in the different health states, because that's going to give us our QALYs. And that's the results, and I showed you a table like this last Friday. So it allows us to make quite fine distinctions about whether or not the patient is cirrhotic or not, whether or not they're treatment naive or treatment experienced, whether they belong to any particular genotype.
Talking about these numbers and the utility values in your master's.
Yes. Sorry, I'm going too fast, haven't I? Sorry. There we are.
Should these values withdraw from other literatures? So the first step is to do a systematic review or something?
Right. Yes. I mean, at least in England, the methods guide for submissions for drugs to be appraised emphasizes the use of systematic review to try and identify the best possible evidence. There is a sort of hierarchy with respect to health state utility values. We tend to prefer to see values that come from the trial itself. So we're taking treatment effectiveness maybe from a trial or series of trials. If possible, we'd quite like to see the health state utility values, these weights, to come from the same trials. If that's not possible, they can come from the literature. And so it's then important to demonstrate that these values from the literature are the most appropriate ones to use. If that's not possible, there's something called mapping, where you can maybe predict values by using some other measure. But yes, so there's there's guidance, a methods guide that says this is how we would like it done, and gives alternatives if that's not possible. Okay.
Excuse me.
Yes.
What happens when there is no such literature in doing the economic evaluation in Japanese tradition?
Okay. Where there is no evidence, as it were, you then fall back on things like expert opinion. And there's different ways of collecting expert opinion, but you could then try and get some consensus about what values should go into the model. That's not really very desirable, but in the absence of other evidence, it's probably the best you can do. And it still has the merit, at least, it's transparent. People can see what numbers went into the model and how they were obtained. Whereas if you don't do that, and you just ask people, should we recommend this or not, and they say yes or no, you don't know what their reasoning was. You don't know what information they've used to form their judgment.
I just thought that the value of each utility may be different between
Different countries.
Yeah.
Yes, quite possibly. We do have EQ5D values for many different countries, about 26 different countries, one of which is Japan. So it's been scored or valued in a Japanese population. There are differences between countries, that's true. I had a public health, MSc public health student I was supervising, and then she enjoyed the experience so much she decided to do a PhD with me. I'm sorry, a bit advertising there. And I said, fine, what do you want to do it on? She said, oh, she's a rehabilitation doctor. I'm interested in doing a cost-effectiveness study of rehabilitation. I said, okay, fine. And then I said, how are you going to measure health benefits? She said, I'll think about that. She came back and said, well, actually, I think EQ5D looks quite a good measure. I said, okay, fine, yeah. Where are you doing the study? In Thailand. I said, oh, so you're going to use UK values in Thailand? Or are you going to use the values, say, from Japan or South Korea? And she sort of thought about it and came back and said, I'm going to collect values for Thailand. So she ended up not doing a PhD on the cost effectiveness of rehabilitation, but she very enterprisingly went and got funding from the Thai government and did a study, a representative survey of Thai population, sample size, about 1,300 I think, where she got them to value the EQ5D health states. And so she then got Thai values. And the funny thing was, when we compared the Thai values to the values for all the other countries, Japan, South Korea, etc., the country Thailand was closest to in scores was England. And so you could say, oh, she didn't really need to bother. But that would be a very negative way of looking at it. I mean, she was absolutely inspiring to sort of have the initiative and just make it happen. But as I say, it just so happened the values were similar to the English values. I put it down to them driving on the left-hand side of the road. That's what we do in England as well. No, I'm not serious. Well, we do. I'm not serious now. Yes. Yes.
There's another popular scales SF36, I think. Which one?
Right.
Choose the scales.
Okay, I'll try and answer this question. I'm only looking. Yeah. Okay. It's one of my pet subjects, so it's irresistible not to answer your question. SF36 is short form 36. It comes from an original measure that had about 72 items. And so it's a general health measure. It's got different domains, and it's very widely used. It doesn't have any scoring system beyond if you answer yes or no, you're getting 1 or 0. You know, so you don't get there's no weighting involved, no preferences involved. EQ5D has identified how important different dimensions are. Mobility, pain and discomfort, anxiety and depression, ability to do usual activities. SF36, everything, as it were, counts the same. There's no weighting. And so for that reason, SF36 is not thought to be particularly suitable as a measure because it's missing that aspect. So another student of mine, although I was just an external advisor, for his thesis, he decided to come up with this SF6D. So taking the SF36 data and giving it weights, obtaining weights, and he ended up with the 6D, says 6 dimensions, and his SF6D, his name's John Brazier, he it utilises information from about 12 of the SF36 items. It's quite a good measure. However, I probably still think EQ5D is better, partly because we've just got much more data on it and much more evidence about it. SF6D has a rather unfortunate floor effect. The lowest score you can get on the SF6D is something like 0.24. EQ5D, you can go down and down. In fact, you can go below 0. The idea that some health states are worse than dead. And so that's a bit of a shortcoming in SF6D. Does that answer? I don't know if that answers your question. Yes, I suppose it does. All right, don't use SF36, but if you're using SF36 data, turn it into an SF6D first.
I see there is some transformation table from SF60 maybe into EQ5.
There has been mapping from the SF6D to EQ5D, yes, because they are quite closely correlated. So there is that possibility as well. But of course, anytime you map, you're adding uncertainty, because there's uncertainty about the relationship or the equation that you're mapping with.
Also, the EQ, besides the EQ5D, EQ5D also included the VAS scale.
EQ5D starts by asking a VAS question, but it's not generally used for valuation purposes. What's used is the subsequent time trade-off questions. I could speak for hours and hours without stopping on this subject, but I must not give in to that temptation. So yeah, so the point being, we then get some recommendations based on evidence of clinical effectiveness and on evidence of cost effectiveness. And in the English case, a positive recommendation from NICE is mandatory. The NHS must provide within 3 months these treatments. The red ones, if we don't recommend, it's then up to the NHS, but they usually don't provide it because they haven't got the resource.